Welcome back. And I guess after the last session with admissions directors from schools in Southeast Asia, in France, in North Carolina, Georgetown, where else did we have? A wonderful, Belgium, a great international mix. And this second panel, bringing voices of alumni from the world's top business schools, is no different, as I welcome individuals both with tremendously eclectic backgrounds and of course the business schools that they chose to take their careers to the next level. You know, we call this a specialized masters festival because the array of options continues to grow at these top business schools, the masters in business analytics. In fact, Imperial has a business analytics program that receives more applications per places than Stanford's MBA. So demand for these programs is sky high, certainly in the last year. And I'm delighted to welcome three alumni from three of those top schools, starting with Presiana Karastayanova. And Presiana, I didn't say the word president, there wasn't an autofill, but I think you did share that when people send you emails, very often the email fills out the word president before they get to Presiana, is that right?
That is right. I get that every week.
So there's a sense of destiny for the next steps of your career. You're currently
Absolutely.
a business analyst at McKinsey, and we're delighted to have you with us to talk about the experience that you had with the Masters in Finance at Imperial. Also on that Masters in Finance track in financial analytics is Clémentine Boujou. Clémentine went to the London Business School that opened the doors to the financial markets of London, and she's now an analyst at JP Morgan. Clémentine, thanks for joining us. These are volatile days on the markets, so 60 minutes with us is precious. And also from ESMT Berlin, a school that's really established itself in the European landscape and launched a master's in management just a few years ago. Shruti Vasudet, who is now the Chief of Staff for Global Business Development at Merck Healthcare. Shruti, were you one of the pioneers, one of the first students to join the Masters in Management?
Second batch. So I let them test it first and then went in.
Some of those teething problems had sort of moved on. Well, maybe we can start with you, Shruti, and the MIM experience that you had, and obviously the success that you've subsequently enjoyed in your career. Why did business school feel like the right next step for you?
Thanks for that question. Actually, I have to say, so my first degree was bioengineering, so very scientific and technical, and that's what I had imagined for myself, and that's a degree I did in the UK. So that's what I'd imagined for myself, being a bioengineer, kind of between the two worlds of medicine and engineering. It felt like the sweet spot to be in, and I did my first degree, and then I had the opportunity to work in the UK in a multinational electronic engineering company where I did really applications engineering, so as technical as it gets. And in that time, that was my first industry experience in the engineering world. And in that time, I also had the opportunity to do a rotation in inside sales. And that's where I realized that, it's actually maybe the business side of science and technology that is pulling me more, that is more interesting at this point. And I thought, maybe that makes sense to chase that career instead. And you could stay in a technical track and develop at some point to become move to the management side of it. But I thought maybe doing a master's in management could accelerate that move. So moving from still being in the sphere of science and technology, but doing more business related things. And that's why I did the master's in management.
Right. Now the MIM is often described as a pre-experience master's degree versus the MBA, where at ESMT and other schools, the average age might be 29, 30, with 5 or 6 years of professional experience. So was it the sort of the eagerness to combine that STEM background and the technical skills with the management skills at an earlier stage of your career rather than waiting to do the MBA?
Exactly. That is absolutely the right answer. I checked a lot of MBA programs at the time, and I saw that I needed to have X number of years of industry experience before I could apply to them. And that eagerness of doing it earlier is what prompted me. And in many schools that I've seen and that I was evaluating at the time, the MIM programs reflected very much the MBA program, right? But were just simply for younger people with fewer years of experience. And I thought, okay, then why not do this now and enter into that business side of science and technology earlier?
Got it. So there you are with the pivot Now, in Clementine, in your case, you'd studied some finance classes, I think, at undergrad. So then the decision to do the master's in financial analyst, that was sort of to take a big step further forward and really sort of focus on the career that you're now successfully developing with JP Morgan and one of the big banks.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, it's true in finance. I mean, even in other areas of consulting, a master's isn't vital. A lot of banks and other companies are happy to welcome you in their graduate program straight after bachelor's. But for me, I thought, when you're just 22, 23, having that extra year of meeting people in London, building a network, going to different recruitment events with other banks can never hurt, really. You build a very valuable, well, as I said, network for life. And then on top of that, indeed, just learning more about finance in general is never a bad thing, even though it's true the academic finance isn't the real life JP Morgan, whatever, banking finance, but it's good to have the notions, understand what's going on a bit more. So that's why I did it. Yeah.
Is that a tricky or an interesting transition where you've gone from that sort of deep level of theory and then there's the practical application in the role that you now have at JP? How does that work?
Well, a little bit. I mean, I think every year we have, very keen interns are like, oh, this is how you calculate this. I learned it in class. Like, no. We have a template. Scrap what you know. Put 2%. And then it's like, okay, no, I'm exaggerating. There is obviously a level of academia in it, but obviously there are a lot of shortcuts. And because everything has been done 50 times, there are, ways to make templates and things quicker.
Right. It's, well, I guess, we never stop learning, whether it's on the job or in school. And all three of you had made that decision, very conscious decision, to invest in your continued learning. Now, Presiana, in your case, you'd already been awarded a prestigious scholarship from Bulgaria to come and study in the UK, did your GCSEs and studied at the University of Bristol, I think, to begin with. Yeah. So the extension of that and then heading to Imperial, what was the appeal for you?
Yeah, so after doing kind of my bachelor's in economics, I went into investment banking, so similar to Clementine. Spent kind of a year and a half there, learned a lot. I was in M&A doing consumer and retail. Enjoyed parts of it. I think it's a great place to be when you're starting out your career. And then I was ready kind of for a new challenge. I was really curious about different industries as well, and thinking a little bit more from the strategic side of things. So Imperial to me was kind of like a new adventure, time to explore a little bit more. And the course was very diverse, so it was not just purely finance, even though I was still really passionate about finance. I wanted to learn about all aspects. We also had classes on marketing, on corporate, and so on. And when I was kind of awarded that scholarship for Imperial as well, I definitely couldn't say no. And that opened my eyes in many, many different ways, that consulting is a very interesting place to be. So yeah, definitely kind of a great year to open my mind to new things, not just investment banking.
Right, and you're the interesting example. It's not just the MBA that's the sort of fast track to MBB. Do you think that the Masters played a pivotal role to secure the position at McKinsey?
Very much so, yeah. I think it prepared me in many ways, not just academically. Academically, it's very rigorous, definitely a tough one. But I got involved in 1,000 different things that developed kind of my leadership, my problem-solving skills, my communication skills, kind of became an all-rounder person who is not just, let's say, good at Excel and modeling that investment banking prepares you for, but many, many different ways. And Imperial gives you that opportunity to get involved in things such as I was leading the finance club, I was a student blogger, I was presenting in different events and so on. So I think it was definitely pivotal.
Shruti, we talked earlier about this collection that you have of Starbucks mugs. There were 42 of them. I don't know if you already had the one that said Berlin, but very often this idea of continued graduate study is an opportunity to new culture, new experience, a great environment. Was Germany and Berlin, perhaps in particular, with everything that the city has to offer, was that part of the appeal?
Yes, I would say so, but I want to share a little bit about why I picked Berlin. So, like I said, I studied in the UK. I'm originally Indian and I grew up in Kenya. Then I moved to the UK to do my undergrad at Sheffield. And then I was toying with the idea of doing this master's, right? Like I said, having a STEM background, I still wanted to be close to science and technology. And when I was looking at ESMT, the name says it itself, it's the European School of Management and Technology. And I thought that that was a good school for me to do my MIM, because it would mean that I could still stay very close to the technology aspect of it. Considering the fact that I think some of the founding members of that business school are leading German engineering companies, right? And I think that was for me the number one reason to choose this school as opposed to another one, or stay in the UK. That I thought Germany is the country, when you think about engineering and technology, you think about Germany. So that's the stereotypical reason why I chose Germany. Berlin, on the other hand, I think for cultural reasons, I think it's a fantastic place to be. But it's also a bit of a startup hub. And I thought, I've done industry. It would be a good opportunity to come closer to the startup world. And Berlin offers exactly that. So that kind of triangle between, cultural diversity and experience that a new city and a new country would offer, plus the fact the technical component, the engineering background and closeness to that, but also the closeness to the startup world. So I think that triangle did it for me for choosing ESMT Berlin.
Got it. Clementine, I'm sure we'll talk more about the doors that LBS can open, but for London itself, that proximity, how does that play out both in sort of the classroom experience, access that you might have to industry leaders, and of course networking that you mentioned earlier, that's such a key part. So how does location play a role?
It helps. London Business School in particular helps a lot because it's on the Jubilee line, so it's direct access Canary Wharf. So if you've just heard of an event that's going to be, the same day at 4 p.m., just get on the tube and go. I mean, okay, fair enough, you have to sign up and stuff, but it's true, you don't have to plan much. And in that sense, you're just always close. Like, oh, somebody wants to do a coffee chat, fine, meet in Marylebone, see you in 30 minutes. It's just that reactiveness that I feel gets you like a head start versus other people where you have to schedule the Zoom a week ahead, blah, 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 So, in that sense, it's hard. Obviously, I didn't live the same thing in another country, so I can't compare two experiences, right. But I can imagine that if I weren't in London, there'd be just a little bit more hassle with organizing these things. Yeah.
And as a calling card, it's a school that opens doors.
What do you mean in what sense? Sorry.
In the sense that 4 o'clock rendezvous in Canary Wharf and off you head. Did you find that with the LBS credential and as a student at the school that already started to open doors for you?
And there are a fair amount of alumni, from LBS that are still in London. So in that sense, it is a name people will have heard of. And I mean, it depends. I mean, yeah, it's. I've been in places where there's been no LBS alumni, and I'm kind of like, oh, why? There should be, and others where it was a room full of them. So obviously it does vary, and there's a bit of luck involved. But overall, yes, every place you end up working at, somebody will know somebody. Also because the school is quite close knit, a lot of people know other people who work at places. So yeah, the London network is pretty strong in that sense. Yeah.
Right. Similarly, Prasyana, maybe speaking to Shruti's point of, she saw science and technology embedded in the school name at ESMT. I guess within Imperial College Business School, you've got Imperial College, and that's a relationship the business school then enjoys with life sciences, healthcare, any number of sort of STEM-related focus. Does that play out? Do you have the time to then cultivate relationships and connections with the rest of the college?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think it's not just the time. We also have dedicated kind of networking opportunities and clubs as well, where we kind of mix with each other. So for example, there's the Imperial College Business School Finance Club, but there's also the overall College Finance Club, which is run by people with various backgrounds. And there's plenty of events where you would see a mix of the people from STEM backgrounds and finance backgrounds. And then the other kind of interesting part is that a lot of people who study their undergrad at Imperial then go on to study business at Imperial College Business School. So there's a lot of mix there as well. And obviously we share as well same building. So it's really helpful to we end up just naturally meeting and sharing ideas. We also have things like, entrepreneurship clubs and so on, where you just get all sorts of backgrounds as well. So it's just very, very natural. I can say that I have plenty of friends from those backgrounds as well. It's not just the finance people, so it's very, very cool.
Right. So from Berlin to London, we've got the Museum Mile in Berlin. You've got the Science Museum, the V&A on your doorstep.
And natural history.
And natural history, yeah, we mustn't forget my favorite museum as a kid, those wonderful dinosaurs and the whale bones. So let's imagine all three of you day one in Berlin or London. And if you could now give advice to yourself back on day one, as you're looking at finance clubs and entrepreneurship clubs, and I can be at Canary Wharf by 4 o'clock, what would your advice be to yourself with so many opportunities, so many different things that you can do? How do you plan your time? Shruti, you strike me as being something very sort of thoughtful in your process. Was it almost overwhelming to get started?
I'd say, Matt, I think it was exciting, to be honest. I was in a new country. I was in a new, a place that not everybody speaks English straight up, right? That was completely new to me. I'd always been in Commonwealth countries where everybody spoke English, so that was new. But in terms of advice that I would give to myself back then is, maintain that momentum of excitement throughout the year, because I think specializing too early is probably not the best thing to do when you're at business school and you have so many opportunities that these clubs and sustainability clubs that, for example, ESMT also has a sustainability club, has an entrepreneurship club, and so on. And I wish that I had done more of those things while I still had the chance, rather than being very focused or specialized quite early, I think. So be excited, but keep that excitement and momentum going throughout, I think.
Right, sort of sustaining that curiosity. Clementine, you are focused on building the next steps of your career in finance. At the same time, you're a passionate environmentalist. So how do those other passions that you and fellow classmates, how do they all sort of mix together and create this wonderful sort of synergy and energy of ideas?
Well, actually, on that note, and I think this links to Soti's point, also, and to answer this and the previous question, I think one advice I would give to people arriving in London and at these schools is really to not put the clubs and the social side too much like as a sidekick kind of thing. Let's be honest, the academics at master's level are not important. I mean, you're there to learn extra things, but you don't need a first in your master's degree to get into the employers you want. Whereas on the contrary, anybody you will meet, you'll likely meet again in London in other contexts, or you'll know people who know them. And I kind of regret in that sense not taking part in more of the MBA events and other kind of clubs that, fair enough, maybe on paper I had no interest in, but actually I could have, made some new friends there and learned about new things. But it's difficult, you join these programs and there's a huge pressure to get, your career started, get an internship ASAP. Academics are very demanding, especially for me. I'd never done finance like fully before, so everything was new. And then on the side of that, it's like, oh, and there's all these clubs organizing welcome drinks and events every day at 5. Okay, so your schedule is full. So yeah, no, I mean, it's not a massive regret of mine, but I think that's one piece of advice I would give somebody, not to stress too much about getting that A+ on every exam. Like, it doesn't matter at this level anymore. Yeah.
Right, and you sort of remind me that within LBS they've got there's the Sloan program, so execs in their late 30s, early 40s, the full-time MBA, exec MBA, other master's programs, and really you have the opportunity and the access to so many other activities just beyond your group and the students in the masters in financial analysis.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I realized that at an event actually at the end of the year where I met this guy who's like CEO of some oil and gas company in Kuwait. I was like, oh, hello. And he was like executive MBA, like maybe easily 35. I was like, okay, so okay. I had a lot to learn from him and I felt very humble all of a sudden. I was like, okay, this is the sort of people we have at our school. Okay, I should have met more of these. This is really interesting. But anyway, so that's just a random anecdote. But
yeah, you just never know who you're going to meet. Also, the clubs, Prasiana, are perhaps an opportunity for leadership roles. You mentioned being the president of the finance club. How does that sort of tangibly add to the skill sets and what you're learning about yourself?
Gosh, so many ways. I think it comes with a lot of responsibility, of course, because you are kind of liaising with a lot of companies as well and alumni and so on, and you also have the responsibility to support students interested in finance as well. So I think it develops many different skills. To me, first of all, this kind of being very organized and kind of making plan and leading a team as well, which at my job I kind of do on a day-to-day basis as well. So we had a team, I think, of overall 10 students as well, and we had to budget and make a plan for the year and just think about what are the best ways to support students. And the other way is kind of we were working alongside the Imperial staff as well. So that was an amazing way to get to know the school as well and make close relationships with kind of not just students, but the staff as well. And then as well, kind of communication, presenting, understanding what students need as well. I think I developed a lot of skills on that. So, and I'd also just wanted to second what was just said on getting involved in many things, because the best thing I did, I think at Imperial, was just say yes to everything, regardless of whether I was directly interested or not. Because what I found out is at every different event, I would meet someone random, someone new that would give me a new insight. And then I see them around the school, they introduce you to someone else, and they just build this amazing network of different opportunities. And I think just one tip would just say yes to everything as much as you can. There's plenty of things out there for you.
Great. So we keep up the enthusiasm levels throughout the year. Thank you, Shruti. We say yes to everything, Preciana, and then Clementine, we'll have to whisper this one that the grades that you come away with perhaps aren't the most important thing. It's the people. So, okay, here we are, a day after International Women's Day. Shruti, working in male-dominated industries, do you think in terms of the confidence that the Masters then gives you, the career that you're building, you're in this Chief of Staff role at Merck, does it play a role to then sort of say, this is what I want for my career, this is what I'm going to pursue?
Yes, I think so. When I joined Merck. Merck is a pharma company, a 350-year-old pharma company, one of the oldest pharma company in the world, right? And very close to what I studied, which was bioengineering, so still within the healthcare industry. And when I joined the company, I joined as part of a trainee program, Matt. That was essentially a trainee program with people with these dual backgrounds. So you had a bachelor's in STEM, and then you had a master's in management, essentially. And then you came onto this kind of program. And when I came onto the program, I realized that I could bring a lot of my previous experience from the degree, but also from my previous education into that. And as I spent time on that program, so I was very fortunate. I got picked out of the program and recruited into quite a senior role, Associate Director of Global Alliance Management, very early on in my career, being one of the youngest people to have that kind of role. And I think there's two sides to it, right? There's the male-dominated industry side, and then there's the being young side, which is another, you could see it as a benefit of the MIM programs or these early masters in management programs, where you're always going to be younger than a lot of people that would come out with a management degree and an MBA, for example. So I think that combination, I think what it did for me is it gave me the confidence because I had the theoretical knowledge from my degree, but also being thrown into these kind of environments and being, plucked and placed into maybe roles that that normally older people would do, I think gave me the boost of confidence. Of course, it always starts with this undertone of, you feel the need to prove yourself. And especially as a woman and a younger woman, you really feel that need to prove yourself. But I think that kind of chain of needing to prove yourself, then that being validated by other people acknowledging that, and then, that loop kind of is what gives you the confidence to keep going and keep doing that. So I'm really grateful for all of the companies that celebrated diversity so strongly, not only in terms of gender, but in terms of race and age and sexual orientation, for example. So I think there's the right momentum, and we're at a very good junction in time for that.
Right, sort of making that a virtuous loop. Clementine, you talked about having done one or two finance courses at undergrad, but you're fairly limited, so there was everything to learn in the master's program. Is there a sense as you meet your other classmates, everyone seems so smart, everybody else already understands finance, I have everything to learn. Is there almost like an imposter syndrome of how do I fit in? I mean, you've got wonderful sort of energy and confidence perhaps, but is there an initial sense of, is this the right place for me?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first few days is, did they check my transcript? I've never done this before. Like, I'm super lost. Because even though it is meant to be for people who, because actually the MFA is discouraged for people who've done finance degrees, because otherwise they're going to be a bit of a repeat. But still, you do have some people in there that've done asset management, corporate finance, like all of these classes at pretty advanced levels already. So they're just navigating the space, easily. And it's a bit, you do feel a little bit behind on these people initially, but to be fair, for me, at least, like everything we did was always in study groups. So the study groups are always organized to have like a mix of those people, and therefore I kind of ping ponged with the others a lot and learned from from my peers, which made everything kind of easier and smoother. But no, definitely, imposter syndrome is very easy to get in these schools where everybody around you is just so impressive.
Right. And I mean, in terms of that collaborative spirit and study groups, in the previous admissions panel, one of the speakers talked about, we sort of said, put away those sharp elbows. I mean, Preciana, is that something that you felt that, here you all were facing that tough finance exam on a Thursday morning and how you could collaborate? So, they leave the alpha attitude at the door.
Absolutely. I mean, I have to say a lot of the work, or if not most of the work that we did, was in teams, and we every kind of couple of months we rotated teams as well, so you could get to work with many different people. That also prepares you very well for the real world, because at least in consulting, I change projects every 6 weeks with new people, new projects, and so on. So it's quite stressful, but the master's prepares you. And I have to say that it's the collaboration, it's amazing. Everyone's really friendly, and yes, everyone's looking for jobs, but we're kind of all in this together in a way. So one example of an anecdote I'm going to give you is, I started the master's not really knowing what a case study is. I was very confused about the whole process, a consulting case study basically for an interview. And I had a few friends who basically walked me through the whole process end to end, practiced with me throughout the year, supported me in the interview process and everything. So, and that resulted in me getting a job at McKinsey. So essentially, I owe it to them, I have to say. So that's just a small anecdote of how supportive everyone is as well. And we just teach each other, and we like to see each other succeed. So I think I have very fond memories of this friendships and collaboration at the master. So it was lovely, yeah.
Right. And those can become lifelong friendships. You talk about supportive. What would be other ways that you would describe your classmates, Preciana?
Gosh, so many ways. I think I would say full of passion and energy about the subject. I would have to say very hardworking, very intelligent. Imposter syndrome was big for me as well, so don't worry about that. I think everyone's very, very technically skilled as well. And I just have to say very curious. So our classes were kind of full of interaction between us and the professors. It was never kind of professor talking at us for hours. It was just all of us just being really curious, going to office hours, interacting, and just, yeah, I would say that this best describes my cohort.
Right. And from Kenya and the Commonwealth to Sheffield, Shruti, here you were in another country, another sort of maternal language. How did that sort of shape, if you were to describe classmates at ESMT, how would you describe them?
So I think in my class, Germans were the minority, really. I think there were 5 Germans and 50 people. So I think the idea of diversity was very high. I think we had people from all over the world, even countries that I'd never imagined I would meet someone from, right? Somebody came from Lesotho, for example. That's somebody I thought I would, being from Africa myself, I thought I would never come across that kind of nationality at the university. So I think there were a lot of people from all over the place, but we all spoke English. All of the classes were in English, but we did have German classes, Matt. So we did have language support. So that was that was an option you could do as a non-German. And then the Germans had the opportunity to learn any other language they wanted, like French or Spanish, and that was built into the program. And yeah, I think I have a very similar experience, this kind of friendly, this bond, this kind of picking each other up and teaching each other what one may have missed. And I, for one, I'm engaged to one of my MIM classmates, soon to be married. So it was a fabulous bonding experience for me, I can tell you that.
Well, yeah, the school obviously can take some credit for making that introduction. That's a wonderful next step. I don't think they promised that on the website or in the brochures, but it's a lovely outcome. When you're tired of London, you're tired of life. But I mean, London can be a daunting, overwhelming city to get lost in, Clémentine. Again, as you think in terms of classmates and just everybody getting through this intensive experience, how would you describe them, and even how all of you then navigated a year in London?
Well, first, congrats, Shruti. That's a very cute story. I'm very happy for you. For us, I think, you know, you're right that London is big and a bit daunting, but I think we kind of created our own little neighborhood because most of the people lived around the school. So the whole kind of Marylebone LBS neighborhood kind of became ours. All of the parties and events were mostly around the school. So I think, you know, on the contrary, the people who chose to live, you know, a bit further away, maybe to save rent, whatever, kind of regretted that. Because it's true for them. I was like, oh, you know, an event, I have to take the tube for 40 minutes. Should I come, etc. So actually, on that note, my advice would be to generally live close to the school you go to. I think that helps. What else? Actually, yeah, no, I think that was mostly it. Yeah, you know, I think wherever you go, there'll be a bubble formed somewhere where people will meet, and you just need to kind of find your space in that little bubble.
Because presumably you spill out of class, and either there was something that was discussed that you want to kind of, you know, then talk through with classmates. So
Yeah, exactly. You spread, you go
are you on the
out,
campus
everybody
until...
goes in the street. 2 minutes later, there's 5 at Joe and the Juice, there's five at the canteen, there's 5 in the park. So it's as if the classroom just extended outside. So everybody's around.
Yeah, I always think that the ducks at Regent's Park must pick up so many, you know, tips about management, leadership, finance, just for all of the students feeding them bread every day. You gave the example, Preciana, very, very concrete in terms of classmates that had really helped you to prepare a case. And obviously that was part of McKinsey's recruitment and continues to serve you well, I'm sure. There's a very tangible demonstration of how the Masters has helped you in the next steps of your career. Are there any others that you feel are very present right now, but also perhaps one or two that are going to serve you, not today, but maybe 5 years, 10, 15 years from now?
That's a really good question. I think there are many of them, but I think the first and biggest one is just leadership. And that's a bit of a broad, could be even a cliche term, but I had so many opportunities to lead teams or be part of sub teams and just kind of raise my voice. And I have, this is a really crucial skill, I think, in most careers, but especially in consulting, where day one, I'm presented with senior client and I have to talk through analysis, be confident, and so on. So I think that's the biggest skill. Also, I have to say working in teams, which is kind of related, again, a very big one in my career. And I think going forward, that's going to be big. So as I mentioned, I think there wasn't a single project that was not in teams. A lot of the coursework was with other people, and that rotation really helped me to see different working styles. And then I think the way that the program is set up, it's very kind of varied. So first term, you do a lot of finance kind of topics and courses. But then second and third terms, I kind of could pick and choose what I want to focus on. And there's a lot that you could pick as well. So I picked a lot of kind of management focused things that helped me in my consulting career now. So kind of those three made me a very, very well-rounded person who now can do well, hopefully, in consulting as well. So, yeah.
I'm going to drill a little deeper on one of those. You talk about working in teams, and perhaps, you know, some people already have an instinctive affinity or an ability to, you know, collaborate and work successfully in teams. So how does the Masters at Imperial either formalize that learning and give you frameworks, or is it simply in the sort of experiential year that you're spending to say, this is a dynamic of a team that I'll be able to sort of take with me?
That's a really good question. I think it's a bit of both. Because when you start and you have that kind of introductory week where you have your, let's call it kind of a family home team that you stay with throughout the year. And this is more what we call the support bubble. So I had these 4 or 5 classmates, which were my team throughout the year, and we could rely on each other for, let's say, academic content or preparation and so on, which is apart from the formal academic teams and so on. And during the first week, you define how you want to work together, what your styles are. We did an MBTI, which is basically a personality test. Maybe you've heard about it. Just to understand who, yeah, exactly. Who prefers what kind of work? Are you an introvert? Are you an extrovert? Do you rely more on your judgment and so on? And that really opens your eyes to how different people are and how you have to adjust. And funnily enough, that's something very intrinsic to McKinsey as well. When you start a project, the first thing you do is you have an hour kickoff where you go through your Myers-Briggs as part of it, and you just adjust to other people's working styles. Maybe someone's really close to the numbers and attention to detail. Maybe someone is really big picture thinker. Maybe someone likes to work late at night. Maybe someone likes to work early in the morning and so on. So Imperial prepared me in that sense quite a lot, but also through just doing the work together throughout the year, you just naturally learn those skills.
Right. Now, whether that's a Myers-Briggs test or just the year at London Business School, Clementine, so how that experience holds up a mirror and perhaps reveals something about you that you were unaware of. You know, it could be a great discovery. Was there an aha moment like that where you said, I never knew this about myself?
It's a good question. No, I mean, I would say not, just because during my bachelor's also I did a ton of group studies, so it wasn't something new. But I think one thing I learned from the group studies that's definitely applicable to my job is that not everybody has the same priorities, and in study groups in particular, you have easily, one the guy that will be focused 100% on getting into Goldman Sachs. That's his only goal in life, whereas other people want to get a good grade, and it's you will have clashes because of these things, especially because the business school obviously, they encourage you to have a very good career, but also very good academics. So everybody kind of chooses their priority according to that. But then similarly now, working in my job, I'll be staffed on some deal with other people. And for some other people, this deal will be maybe priority number 3 in the things they have to do. And for me, it'll be the number 1 because it's our team leading it. So you have to manage with these people that are like, oh, I'll be free in 5 hours to discuss this. What? No. So yeah, no, and that's in that sense very, mirrors the experience at LBS and I guess any study group in general. People have different priorities, and I guess you just deal with it and learn.
Right. And Shruti, is there a moment on a Thursday afternoon at Merck where you say, that comes directly from the class that I took with professors, and you can see how you're then sort of applying the thinking from the master's program, and then similarly with Preciana, things that maybe you haven't necessarily implemented yet, but you feel will continue to serve you well 5-10 years down the road?
Yeah, I think, Matt, that's a very good question. And I've actually spent a lot of time thinking about that because we had a very special module at ESMT where you spend 2 months of your time in a consulting group. So you form a group of classmates and you go out and do a pro bono consulting project in a social impact kind of format. So in these 2 months, you have to essentially assign yourself or find projects, and ESMT, of course, sources them as well, but with the UN or with the local government or with some kind of NGO, then you serve as a pro bono consultant there. And I did that with my team at the UN in South Sudan, in Juba, which was a war-torn country at the time. They'd just come out of a civil war. And we spent 2 months, working on this project. And I can tell you that what that's done for me and will continue to do for me for many, many years to come is in the environment that I work in at the moment in global business development. A lot of my day is about deal making, negotiating business cases and valuations and so on. But the undertone of social impact that I think I developed in those 2 months will probably be the one that stays with me longest. And looking always for what's the purpose? Where am I helping the world? What am I doing to create social impact and create value and some kind of humanitarian development? Luckily for me with healthcare, it's very easy, right? You see where the drug that you're developing and that you're partnering with another company to develop will directly help a cancer patient at some point, for example. But I think that kind of learning that I want to always be associated with some kind of social impact, irrespective of how mechanical or how financial my job gets, I think that undertone will always stay. And I think that learning that that's a big driver for me, that came through that project at ESMT. And I think for that, I'm forever grateful.
Right. So Clementine gave the example of priorities and the guy that it's all about getting the job at Goldman Sachs. You've all pursued and landed great positions at great firms. If the masters that you studied helped to make that pivot, will you need to go back to school again to get another master's, an MBA or whatever it might be? It could be a master's in anthropology, who knows? But would you need to return to school again? Or do you think that everything and the work that you did with career services at your schools will serve you? And I'm not getting you to reveal that you have plans beyond McKinsey, JP Morgan or Merck, but you've got a career to plan. So Preciana, would you have to go back to school again? Or do you think there are already tools that you'll then be able to apply in the next stages of development of your career?
Well, that's a good question. Depends what I want to do next. Maybe if I want to become a farmer or a journalist, maybe, because I don't have those skills. But if it's something along, let's say, private equity or entrepreneurship or going into a corporate, I have to say that I've built skills great enough, I think, to be able to go through the application process by myself, and just know what I need to do and how to prepare, not just only how to interview well, but also kind of the technical skills as well. So let's say I use and abuse the career service for sure. I was there all the time, just getting support and talking to people. And they're really great at allocating time for you and doing mock interviews, mock case studies, and so on. So I don't feel like I would need to do another master's at all. I think I feel very well prepared. So they offer a lot of support. Yeah. Okay,
well, of course, if we're doing another Centre Court event in 2029 and you're an alum talking about the next experience, we'll see. I guess, Clémentine, some people will say, okay, do I pursue the route of the MBA? I could do finance electives in the second year of that program versus the specialization and financial analysis that you've pursued. What's your view? It's given you this wonderful accelerator for the opportunities that you're now pursuing. Would you need to go back to school if you then wanted to move into leading an NGO focused on environmental activism? How
it's really hard to say. I think in finance in general, I don't really think that's a thing. I feel people jump around in finance without needing necessarily school. I mean, but then I guess there's also like a cultural thing, because in the US it's very common for people to do MBAs and to take that 2-year break, come back, etc. So it's hard to say. I think maybe if I did also, want to move to consultancy or something that's a bit more managerial, maybe an MBA would be useful, but that's not currently in my plan. So I haven't really thought about it. But I would say in Europe in general, MBAs aren't that big of a thing. They are, I mean, they are important and recognized, but I don't think it's that much of a norm to go back into an MBA.
Yeah, no, it's true. For many of the top schools, there are other master's programs that are more of a flagship than the MBA program. So applying, you're all at 3 highly selective schools. Application volumes to your schools continues to rise, certainly during this sort of volatile period. If you were to give advice to the applicant, even this wonderful opportunity to sort of step back, hold up that mirror, and really enjoy applying to business school, not second guessing what they expect to hear. So Shruti, as you think about, here I am pulling together this diverse international experience in the background that I have, and I'm trying to sort of frame all of that. I need to take my standardized tests and everything else. What would your advice be to someone applying to school?
I think there's, we're so lucky that we live in a time where there's a plethora of business schools that are all offering programs, equally good or marginally better than the other. So I think what I would advise people to do is really choose the school and the program, not only based on reputation and ranking, but on how it's perfect for you. Like I said, for me, ESMT was perfect because of technology, because of the new city, because of the closeness to startups and things like that. And that was for me the selling point, and the fact that they did all of the social impact work. So I think you really have to pick for yourself and spend some time on looking at the program and looking at what else do they do in addition to teaching you introduction to finance or organization behavior or decision theory or whatever. So really spend time in looking at the character, if I may, of the business school and what the program offers really.
And in terms of how the school then shares that, I mean, it's great that all 3 of you are here to share your very personal experiences in the institutions that you went to. What do you think are sort of some of the most helpful resources then, to really sense that alignment or that sense of fit?
Is that still a question for me?
Yes.
Okay. What kind of resources to choose between schools? Is that the question?
In terms of, do you find that having those conversations with alumni, info sessions, sadly, of course, in recent months, campus visits have been challenging, if not impossible. So to help people to really make those sort of decisions, what do you think the schools can be doing to really create that communication and connection?
Yeah, thanks for that question. So I used to be when I was back in Sheffield, I used to be part of this thing called International Office Ambassador program, where you as a current student get to be an ambassador of the school, and you are invited to various occasions to present on behalf of the school and sell your experience, essentially, right? It's completely unadulterated. You say the truth and you're basically an ambassador for the academy. And I think a lot of business schools do that in some form or the other. I've been to a lot of career fairs as part of ESMT where I've promoted the school, purely out of self-interest. But I think what the schools could do more and more now in this virtual environment is really do more webinars. A lot of people are logging in and watching these webinars. For the other side, so for the students, I would say, abuse LinkedIn, really use the opportunity to reach out to a lot of alumni and ask your questions and say, this is who I am, this is what my interests are, would your business school be the right one for me? Let them sell it to you as well. So those are, I think, the two sides, I would say, how you could make the most of that decision.
Right, and Bresciana, you talked about blogs, and of course video blogging is another medium that you like to explore. Capturing the voices, perhaps the spontaneity of a video, things that you found to be a useful resource, or that Imperial could continue to use for the next generation of applicants to the school.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, doing that video was a lot of fun. I felt like a YouTube blogger for a day. But I think what Imperial does really well is kind of similar to what Shruti said, connecting prospective students with current students. So we have this buddy app as well, where you could just log in and talk to current students as well, who are ambassadors. You can ask them all sorts of questions. Feels like you're just texting on WhatsApp, and it feels very casual. I loved it when I was applying as well, because I felt like I could really ask anything and everything. There's also the connection with the kind of careers team and admissions team as well. So you have touch points there as well. And this was really important to me because I got all the perspectives I needed on kind of how people succeeded in their careers, where people went after, how tough is the academic program, and so on. So I think this is definitely something they should continue doing. And I think also, similar to what Shruti said, I think just having plenty of online events now is really, really important. And not just webinars where you're talked at, but also opportunities to do breakout rooms and speak to current students. I think that's really key. But to me, just the websites per se are not that insightful, because I can imagine they're all very, very similar. I think just that human contact was really important to me making the choice between, let's say, LSE, Imperial, or LBS, or what it is. So, yeah.
Now, there will be applicants to London Business School that will try to memorize the website and think, oh, this is great. I've shown that I have researched the school, and I've remembered every elective that I could take at the program. Clementine, as you think back on the application process for a program that does want to make sure that you've got the solid quant and analytical skills, given the nature of the program, any advice you'd give to the applicant of how to then leverage things that you might have done at undergrad or other areas of interest that clearly also then make a difference in sharing your candidacy with the school?
So actually on tips, maybe I'll separate it in 3 points if I may organize this a little bit. So first of all, you joke around, memorizing the website and stuff. That's really important. Like, I've interviewed people for LBS that just couldn't name one of the clubs we had. And it's just like, oh, this is such an obvious question. You're directly putting yourself in the basket of no research, when actually, this is a really simple thing to do. And a lot of people think, oh, I'll apply to Imperial, HEC, ESCP, LBS. It's all the same anyway. They teach finance. No, there are big differences. Know them before you jump into an interview. Because, the alumni don't forget their favorite event or whatever. So if you can name those, it's always a plus. So that's, again, sounds obvious, but very important. Secondly, I would say, when you apply, you're at a point where your CV is pretty much done. There's not so much you can do extra to scram like an internship or whatever. So really try to use your existing kind of experience to see how that fits also into the school. So not just what the school can give you, but say, I created this club in my bachelor's, and I see you have a lack of that club at the school. So I'm going to found that, and it's going to be great. And, I'm going to introduce people to, I don't know, some crazy dance or whatever. I don't know, just share also what you can bring. And then I think I forgot my third point.
Anyway. Now that we've all memorized the clubs and the website, we also know there's a third.
Yeah, no. I think the third, was just in general, just it's important to. The academics, you say, it's important to have the right background and stuff. That's more for the school to check. I think, it's worth sometimes trying your luck, even though you don't have that econometrics course they require or whatever. But no, just in general, showing true enthusiasm through, having spoken to people and done thorough research goes a long way above just getting a first in your bachelor's or whatever.
Right. And that speaks to, Shruti was saying earlier, rankings, you can be 3 places above, 2 paces below, but sometimes these small differences, focuses, specializations that really then play out, I guess, in the experience. So one final question for all three of you. Some of the rankings have a fairly, inevitably, a flawed or clumsy measure of return on investment. And they will say, well, what is the graduate earning? 3 years out of school, that will be our calculation. As you think of the return on a very conscious investment that you've made in yourself, where better to start than yourself, and you look to measure other ways of that return. Salary is one thing, of course, you want to repay your student loans, but perhaps, Prisciana, starting with you, some of those other less tangible qualities that none of those rankings are capturing, and you say, that is just one of the wonderful outcomes of this experience that I've had.
Oh gosh, I mean, I always say that this was pretty much the best year of my life. And again, sounds a bit cliche, but I think it really was. I think even if it's just what's worth the amazing memories and friends I made, that's already enough for me. But then I think just kind of this long list of soft and hard skills that I developed, I think it's invaluable. So kind of getting that job is obviously one thing, and I'm grateful for that. But I think I just I developed skills from knowing how to build a proper model to understanding how to derive derivatives and all the leadership skills, and just knowing how to interact with teams and so on. So I think just I think it's definitely really, really worth the money, I have to say, because when you see the price of a master's, maybe you're a little bit kind of shocked, but I think you just really develop things well beyond the job you're going to get out of it. I think you just really become kind of a very well-rounded person. You grow a lot, so very, very well worth it.
I'm going to follow up on, of course, something very striking that you say, and I've heard it before from master's students, from MBA students. This was the best year, the best 2 years of my life, and inevitably sometimes the audience is like, well, why? What were the other years like? What made this year? Why is it that it's often that this year at graduate school is such a wonderful year, even as you compare it to undergrad? What did we miss at university that then meant that graduate school was so much more extraordinary?
I think for me is because, first of all, everyone is kind of at the slightly more mature age. And yes, it's really fun to be at undergrad, but everyone's a little bit more grown up. They know kind of what they want. And, they're very well established and so on. So I think that to me, it's different because also you have clear goals in mind, and there's not a day to waste. And every day you just kind of go to different events, and you study at the same time, and you really are prepared for interviews and so on. So I think the hard work in hindsight was also a lot of fun because you learn a lot. Everyone is more mature, so you build really true, meaningful friendships as well. And also, I think just getting involved in those opportunities just leave you with amazing memories. So I think one of my big highlights of the year was a week-long trip to Dubai, which was part of my course in Islamic finance. And we half the days we were having courses, visiting places like Mubadala and Adia, investment funds and so on. And then half the other day was fun activities like, safari trips and drinks and so on. So I think it's just, it's just a plethora of things to do. So in that essence, I think definitely can say it's the best year of my life.
Clémentine, you could probably, work out the yield on US 10-year Treasury bonds right now and what that's doing to the financial markets. We do try to use numbers to place a value on something. Again, as you think about some of the intangibles of the return on the investment that you make, what would you include on that list?
It's difficult because myself, when I saw the cost of my program initially, I was like, at the time I wasn't very familiar with business school. I'd never heard of LBS. I was like, okay, what is this institution? Who did they think they are? I know this sounds a bit, like naive now, but I was young. But now I've done it. Now I realize, oh, okay, LBS is recognized. Like this is a big deal. Like I think so over and above just the name of the school and kind of doors it opens, it just gave me that confidence of being like, okay, now I can do anything I want. So let me be ambitious. Let me try things that I wouldn't have dared to try before, and just I don't know, it just gives you that kind of motivation to just always go further in what you do, which again, very hard to quantify any of this, but it's a mindset, if I may phrase it like that. No.
Shruti, of course, I don't want to force you to admit that, you know, that there's a return on love in a business school experience. In your case, there is that very happy additional element. But, you know, changing country, the tuition fees that Clementine mentioned, and then somehow that's contrasted with that wonderful moment after the visit to the bank where all of you are in this, you know, incredible cafe and just having a wonderful sort of connected moment. As you think about the intangibles that have been part of that return, what comes to mind?
So I was lucky, Matt. I had quite a good scholarship, so I didn't pay the full mind-blowing amount of business school fee, tuition fee that one has to pay. But would I go back and pay it and do it if I didn't get the scholarship? Yes, I think definitely yes, because now that I've come out on the other side, I really see exactly these intangible benefits, right? One of them, I think, for me is, you know, sad but true, but there's a reputation associated with being a business school graduate, right? I think that comes with it, whether that's LBS or Imperial or ESMT, there's definitely that reputation that comes with doing a master's in something business related. Two, I think alumni. That's the one we usually play down a lot or don't see straight up when you apply for it. But that ability to reach out to somebody that's made it big was in your university, I think that makes a hell of a difference. And that's a big one. And I think the third one for me would be you know, what we were talking about earlier is this ability to work with people that are so different from you and realizing that different is not bad, right? Because in undergrad, you're in a group or a team of people doing a project, and you realize that some people have a different way of working, and for you that's straight away not the best way to do it. But in the master's program, you come to learn through these Myers-Briggs and through insights and Berkman assessments and whatever, that everybody may have a different way of working. Doesn't mean that they're less smart or that they're less good or their output may be different. So I think that takeaway of working with people that have a completely different working style or learning style, to me, I think that is an intangible that I really value. Big time.
Of course, I've made a note to myself to go and take one of those Myers-Briggs tests. Maybe John Byrne shouldn't be my business partner after all. We're completely non-complementary. I'd love to think that that's not true. The three of you certainly are wonderful, wonderful ambassadors for your school. We're joined by John. We've talked about the confidence that a program brings, the network, of course, that it offers to you, and even in Shruti's case, finding her future partner. So you can have it all, John. You've analyzed business school rankings, some of their limitations. You know, I'd asked our three guests, what were some of the intangibles that you know, sometimes are just difficult to capture, certainly very personal. And so Prasiana, Clementine, Shruti, again, thank you for bringing your voices, your experience, because I think this is what really, really helps applicants to get a sense of what this experience will be. Your enthusiasm and very, very articulate about the sort of experiences that you've had. So all three of you, thank you for sharing this Centre Court Masters Festival with us. We have your admissions directors with us tomorrow, so we'll talk about each of those hurdles of admissions, how to get into your great schools. Enjoy the rest of the afternoon, and thank you again for being with us.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you.
Bye.